What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I am very excited about today's video, and that is because my buddy KarmaCut, as many of you guys have probably already seen, just published a video that is the first devlog for the game that he is developing with his whole team. That game is called Bellum, and Bellum is a platoon-wide tactical shooter set in the modern era, where you play as U.S. Special Operations, specifically U.S. Army Rangers, and there's also a Russian-like faction that we're able to see in some of the initial footage. So I'm going to talk about the devlog, and I need to disclose some things up front because very clearly I have some natural bias here. First, KarmaCut is one of my very best friends, and I want him to be successful, and I want his game to succeed, and I want his team to succeed. So there's a ton of bias just inherently in that regard. The second piece here is I'm involved in the development process to some degree. There's not a ton of details that I can share with you guys, and so I've got to be kind of careful about what I say and what I share, but I do want to share kind of my initial thoughts to the devlog and some of the information that's already been made public, and I want to do it in a respectful and a tactful way, and share with you some of the things that I'm excited about. I'm not getting paid by any means by the team over at Bellum or KarmaCut, but I am lending my knowledge and, acting essentially as an advisor, gameplay tester, stuff like that. And so, yeah, let's get started by taking a look at some of the initial features. First up is the movement system.
Movement in Bellum aligns with the modern standards of tactical shooters, featuring gradual control over both your speed and your height.
So the movement system and the gunplay, as described by KarmaCut in the video, features the kind of modern standard that you expect from, games like Escape from Tarkov and Gray Zone Warfare, and even some of these new Arma games, where you can control the pace that you move by, either, scrolling the mouse wheel forward and backward and controlling the pace that you walk, run, sprint, etc. And then also changing your vertical elevation. This allows for much cleaner peaks. And limiting exposure, which are obviously important. All right, next up, we have the gunplay itself. Clearly, so KarmaCut used some just archive footage of me shooting. I am talking to him and the team quite a bit about what I think of the weapons handling, not because I have necessarily the right answer, but I do at least understand the firearms piece quite a bit. And I'm happy to provide whatever feedback I can to try to get them to the right solution. And I think gunplay in first-person shooters is such a nuanced topic. It's something that KarmaCut and I have discussed at length, both publicly and privately. And it's something that has to be perfect, right? And the challenge there is it's never going to be perfect for everybody. There's always going to be people who don't like your decision. And if you look at the tactical shooters out in the landscape right now, you see different developers going in different directions. Perhaps the most controversial of those was the squad infantry combat overhaul. They, leaned towards immersion and difficulty and kind of made it difficult to control the player character by increasing the effects of, stamina loss and recoil. And the result with the infantry combat overhaul was an incredibly immersive experience that looked and sounded amazing, but it was very punishing to the player and even frustrating for a lot of folks. It was quite divisive in the squad community. So that's one way you can go with weapon handling. The other way is, you could go the complete opposite and have, both a significantly low time to kill, and you could also have very rewarding weapons that feel great, that are very arcade-like with not a ton of recoil, and it's just point and shoot. And clearly that's not the right answer either. So you got to find some happy medium in the middle. And, what KarmaCut kind of leans towards naturally is a skill-based marksmanship system that still authentically replicates what a highly trained shooter would be capable of doing, but forces the player to actually have some input and, exercise some skill to control the way that the gunfighting occurs. And they're nowhere near final on any of this, obviously. But just think about the person behind it and, how many years he has in the space, how much experience he has playing these different games, and the amount of intellectual bandwidth that have gone into thinking about, from a game design perspective, how to balance it and how to get it right. In that regard, I have a lot of optimism for where the team over at Bellum finally land on their gunplay. The medical system, as shown in the devlog, is, looks quite intuitive. It's nice to see all the realistic stuff there. We're seeing combat gauze, we're seeing tourniquets, we're seeing blood bags, and all those systems. So clearly leaning towards a more authentic medical system, but we don't know yet a ton about the, the way that system's actually implemented, how much player choice is involved, how complicated it's going to be. And I think there's another game design challenge with respect to the medical system, whereby you want it to be authentic and you want it to be realistic, but you also want it to be accessible to casuals so that they can quickly jump in, get the hang of it, and, get through the medical system. It's not going to be so punishing that they don't want to partake in the game. And so again, like hitting that natural balance between authenticity and realism without making the game unfun is something that's top of mind for me. And I know that like those are the kind of things that the team over at Bellum are hypersensitive to make sure that they deliver the best experience they can. Karma shot me a preview of this video, a while back, and we went through it, and I noticed that the tourniquet animation is imperfect, right? Like, so the strap goes on and the avatar in the animation, he rotates the windlass before securing the Velcro. So they're aware of like little stuff like that, and it's super early in development and it's going to get fixed. Like as soon as I showed it to him, he was like, yeah, I think I caught that too. And that stuff is going to get fixed. So don't even sweat it. But it was one of those like little things that I noticed. And that's why it's good to have not just me, but other guys like me with some history and some background in this field that can provide like feedback and catch things like that before they go live. All right, the armor simulation is not necessarily uncommon in the modern tactical shooter space, but I do think the way Bellum's going about it is pretty interesting. And it's the first time we've really seen it in a platoon-wide tactical shooter. This isn't simulated to this extent in games like Squad, certainly not in World War II era games that don't have this, like Hell Let Loose or Postscriptum. So it's good to see it go into a platoon-wide tactical shooter format where it used to just exist in games like Gray Zone Warfare or Tarkov. So it'll be interesting to see how that works when you've got, two big teams of players fighting each other. And if you look at it, they're showing exactly kind of like where the plate silhouette is on the front. And also interesting here, we're seeing side plates, and side plates aren't always simulated in these games. They are certainly a reality for, modern special operations and a lot of conventional units as well. We always wore them at work whenever I was overseas and wearing armor on the job. And so it'll be interesting to see how that affects gameplay. Because I do find in a lot of games that like an armor system can be frustrating from a player perspective, because we've just been playing for all these years, not having to worry about it. And now all of a sudden, like your rifle rounds are hitting a plate and stopping, and you get frustrated. So I'll be looking closely at what the team does in the way of like armor durability. How many rounds of 5.56 or 7.62 or 5.45 does it take to get through these plates? Because that answer can't be infinity, right? They're not, they can't be perfect plates that just work forever. And so it'll be really interesting to see how they tackle that. But it's great to see them, thinking about this stuff already and already having something implemented. Okay, the next thing that they show off is the diegetic UI system, specifically the ATAC or the Android Tactical Assault Kit. This is something that I'm really excited about. It is 2024. There's no reason for hardcore, realistic, kind of milsim style games to have a cluttered HUD all over the screen. There's ways to inform the player what is going on that are in-world and contribute to the world building and the storytelling of the game. So the Android Tactical Assault Kit, the ATAC in Bellum, gives you the ability to have a moving map, to place markers on the map, and do all the things that are shown in the devlog. And it seems to be working extremely well from the footage that we're looking at. And then, I'll be very interested to see how they continue to expand the diegetic UI, because you want to tell the player when they're hurt, you want to tell the player when they're suppressed or when they're tired. And there's ways to achieve all of those things that don't require you to put, a stamina bar on the screen. And it's exciting also to know that because they are so committed to this diegetic UI approach, that it's not going to be like an option. You're not going to have some players, gamma boosting the UI, as it were, and turning on all of these helping, features like a stamina bar that wouldn't exist. So I love that they are committed to this diegetic UI approach. I think that should be the standard in this vertical for sure. And I think players are going to get a ton of value out of it, and it's going to be that much more immersive as a result. Okay, the teamwork-oriented systems are really, really important to the developers over at Bellum. They're extraordinarily important to Karma Cut specifically. This is a guy who is like extraordinarily passionate about nailing the gameplay feel, about making a game that is like realistic, authentic, and fun, and rewarding. And it is a challenge from a game design and a development standpoint to design a game that is both authentic and fun and encourages teamwork. So I'm not going to go into specifics on how they're going to do that. I can't say like the VoIP as described works well, sounds great, and it's good to see that integrated organically into the game. I'd also say that a lot of times that is a standard feature I expect to see in a game like Squad or Operation Heart Store Stop or Squad 44 or Hell Let Loose. But this is, Karma Cut's a guy who grew up with those games and has made his career in that space. And so he knows exactly what he wants out of a VoIP system to encourage teamwork. The rigid role selection screen is like a very nuanced choice for a very specific reason. And it's something that I know that Karma Cut has thought very deeply about along with the rest of the development team. And it's authentic in the sense that, like, we've had these conversations, and you can Google like what a Ranger platoon looks like. And he's recreated that with changes where it's appropriate for gameplay reasons. And by making that rigid order of battle structure, or that rigid task organization structure, you've got guys falling into slots naturally that promote teamwork. And it's no longer about like who can click on the sniper kit the fastest and go lone wolf. Like that is a strategy that is not going to be successful in Bellum. And without, again, going into crazy detail, like there are systems in place that they're still developing, still designing, still working on, that are going to prevent that sort of behavior or discourage that sort of behavior from happening. And this is the big challenge. Like in my mind, the biggest unknown in Bellum as like an experiment in the game design world is, can this approach work? Like, can you design a game that forces and encourages and rewards casuals for playing in a way that would typically be reserved for like highly specialized units in Arma, or in unit kind of PvP esports style squad ops battles? And we're going to see, but I am optimistic and hopeful based off the game design decisions that I have seen and the people behind them that they're going to pull it off. Visuals and sound are important, but like, I can't add any expertise there. The game looks great. It's on UE5. It's going to continue to look better. The sound is really, really good. And I guess the one thing I would say is like having your weapon interact with the world around you. So like when the blast overpressure coming out of the muzzle is kicking up dirt based off of like where you are in the terrain, like that's pretty cool. And in a game where it's really important to be able to spot your adversary, like knowing where you are, how close you are to dirt, what kind of terrain you're next to, when you start blasting with a belt-fed machine gun or even a carbine, that's going to increase the ability of the enemy to see you. So those are like little things that'll go into impacting like, gameplay decisions, which is really interesting. As far as the animations are concerned, they're nailing it. And the one that they show off prominently there with that saw, like he tosses off the box magazine, he opens up the feed tray cover, he works the feeder paws back and forth to make sure there's no links or brass that are obstructing its ability to run the weapon. He opens up like the actual feed tray cover itself to make sure there's no brass and links beneath it, slaps it back down, loads a new magazine, feeds the rounds, brass to the grass, make sure they're seated right into the rear, slaps the feed tray cover closed, racks it, and goes back to work. So like, that's the best animation for a 249 I've ever seen in a game. Straight up. It just is. And all the saw gunners out there watching this are like, yeah, that's pretty freaking legit. So it's exciting to see stuff like that for sure. All right, the core gameplay loop is like the biggest secret that has yet to be revealed. And, there's some hints in the devlog that I'm not going to allude to. I think those who are familiar with Karmacut and his work have probably picked them out. But again, like I go back to like, think about the person behind this. Regardless of what your opinion is on Karmacut, what is true is he has spent his entire adult life in the platoon-wide tactical shooter PvP space. So this is something that he has thought about very, very deeply. It's something that he has dabbled in publicly before and released content before in other games to improve the gameplay loops in those games. And so, this is something that like is truly this man's deepest passion in this space. So I am extraordinarily excited for that to be revealed in the near future. I'm not going to play all the gameplay here. You can run over to Karmakut's channel or others and watch the gameplay in full. I was a part of that playtest. I can't tell you any specifics about the playtest itself. I will say, with the game in the state that it is right now, when I jumped into that playtest, my expectations were exceeded and I had a freaking blast. I'm excited about Bellum. I'm excited for my friend. I'm excited for you guys to get your hands on the game at some point that is not today, not tomorrow, and not the day after, but sometime in the future. And I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I am Controlled Pairs. This has been Bellum, and I'll see you guys in the next one.